will be about applicable and adaptable principles on international environmental law to mankind's activities on the moon. And our second one will be about the nuclear contamination of the lunar environment and the need to address consultative mechanism of lunar activities. So, and here, please welcome Faura and Flavia. They're gonna present our first panel.
Hello everyone, I'm Farah Yasmin from Farah Law School.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon to all. I'm Flavia, I'm from Brazil. Edivaldo, can we start? Would you share the presentation?
I'm gonna share the screen, but we are having problems. Just 1 minute, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Would you, yes, thank you. Yes. So, good morning and good afternoon, like I said. I'm a lawyer and professor of international law and rights of nature in Brazil. My PhD research is on space law in the light of the ecologization of law and intercultural governance of the moon. So first of all, I would like to greet everyone present. Upia, Edivaldo, and especially Farah for her dedication and organization of this event. Today, Edivaldo, please, the next. Thank you. Today, I will defend the use of the principles of international environmental law as an instrument capable of helping to improve international space law, considering the sustainability of human activities on the moon, and consequently, the protection of the lunar environment. Next, please. Firstly, it's important to remember that international law is a systemic instrument, and international environmental law and space law are part of it. So it's also important to remember that according to Article 38 of Statute of the International Court of Justice, the source of international public law are international conventions, international customs, and general principles of law. Doctrine and jurisprudence, in turn, are auxiliary source. Thus, we can say that principles which are based on scientific contests have a normative nature. The states parties, which adhere to the treaties and conventions, must observe these recommendations by adapting their international laws if necessary. This interpretation is also in line with the third clause of the preamble to the United Nations Charter, which states that in addition to treaties, there are other sources, that is, customs and principles. The next, please. As far as space law is concerned, we need to point out that most of the existing documents were created against a backdrop of insecurity and geopolitical dispute as a Cold War scenario. The main objective of outer space exploration was to improve weapons and means of warfare, okay? However, reading the Article 3 of the Outer Space Treaty, we can say that space activities must respect international law, which consequently includes international environmental law. Next, please. And the Article 9 of the same document also draws attention to the fact that it says that that states must take preventive measures to avoid harmful contamination of space and celestial bodies. However, it leaves something to be desired when it comes to preventing risks to the environment, since protection is focused on human activities. Next, please. Item 1 of Article 7 of the Moon Agreement concerns general rules on the lunar environment and provides for the conservation of balance in its environment, which is in line with the Sustainable Development Theory set out in Article 9 of the Space Treaty. However, items 2 and 3 show how much the environmental issue has been weakened by the absence of a prior environmental license system. To clarify why I'm bringing this approach, I'm bringing up these points before I get into the principles, because they demonstrate the importance of adopting preventative measures in order to protect the lunar environment, which is extremely important not only for the advancement of scientific research, but also, in above all, for the balance of the Earth system. Next, please. For this reason, we also need to highlight what some scientists call the lunar Anthropocene. The most important thing about this term is that it draws our attention to the fact that modern human beings, through unsustainable economic growth, have had serious consequences for the Earth. As far as the Moon is concerned, research shows that humans have already caused disturbance at more than 58 cities on the lunar surface, which is why future missions should consider mitigating the deleterious effects on the lunar environment. The idea of the lunar Anthropocene draws our attention to our role as geomorphic agents on the Moon. And this reinforces the need to apply the principles of international environmental law and preliminary environment impact studies to space law. Next, please. The United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, considered by many to be the birth of international environmental law, inaugurated a series of discussions around environmental principles to be observed by states to ensure the conservation of natural resources and the fight against pollution. We must emphasize that environmental protection is intrinsically linked to an anticipatory and preventative approach, and we have several documents to prove it. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, for example, provides for the principles of sustainable development, common but differentiated responsibilities, cooperation, and among others that Farah will also present, precaution prevention as essential for assessing and reconciling divergent interests. The need for the existence and use of general principles of international environmental law is not currently contested, nor is the mandatory nature they can have. Next, please, Edvaldo. The International Court of Justice has already stated the following, open quotes. In the field of environment protection, vigilance and prevention are required because the often irreversible nature of damage caused to the environment and the limits in the very mechanism for remediing that damage. Please, the next. Now I'm going to talk about two principles, namely the principle of prevention and the principle of precaution, because they are the basis for any human intervention in nature. So they must also be based they must also be the base for the human activities on the moon. So the precautionary principle aims to prevent serious and irreversible damage when there is insufficient scientific information. In other words, when there are doubts about the risk or danger of particular activity, when there are not enough scientific studies, the choice should be made to protect the environment, and the obligation to prove it lies with those who are interested in the activity. The principle of prevention, on other hand, aims to prevent the damage to the environment using measures applicable before the implementation of activities considered to be effectively or potentially capable of contaminating or altering the environment. For this reason, it's important that the preliminary environmental impact studies are required before activities are implemented, as is the case with many activities on Earth. Anticipating the risks, we can say that anticipating the risks and possible impacts involve the installation, operation, and closure of activities is essential for consolidating safe operations for everyone. In the same context, the principle of intergenerational solidarity, which has an ethical character and aims to promote cooperation between nations for the sustainable use of resource, is also an important instrument to the activities on the moon. These ethical arguments concerned with the future are essential for cooperation and solidarity, and for understanding the interdependence between human beings and nature. Moving on the conclusion, so as not to overrun the speaking time, I think that the importance of applying the principles of international environmental law to human activities in space, and especially on the moon, relates to the respectful and functional association of human beings with nature. This concerns the adoption of anticipatory measures to protect the Earth system, the moon itself, scientific research, and the actors directly involved in the technological production and development of these activities, or in other words, so that the activities are in fact sustainable. Next, Valdo, please. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Flavia, for your presentation. I think it's very important for us to understand about how we're going to protect the lunar environment. So thank you so much. And now, please welcome Farah. Farah is gonna tell us a little bit more about how we can protect the moon environment.
Thanks so much. But Alvaldo, can you change the host to me?
Yes, Farah.
Thank you.
Just a minute, please. I want to say hello to Christopher. Hello, Christopher.
Hello, hello, good to see you. Happy IMD. And parabéns.
Thank you.
Flavia, could you please change the host?
You are the host now. You have to do this.
Okay, sorry.
Perfect, amazing.
You
Alvaldo,
have
thank
to
very
click
much.
Farah's name. Do you see Farah's name?
Yes, I did, Farah. You are the host.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, amazing. So hi everyone, this is Farah Yasmin, still from Farah Law School, and also serve as a member in the legal division of the Lunar Environmental Protection Working Group of GEGSLA, or Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities. Welcome back, folks, for you who met me in a separate IMD event. I see you there. And I'm sharing with you some of our working group's work that is applicable and adaptable principles on international environmental law to mankind's activities on the moon. Everyone, these are short mentions of instruments that I use in my presentation. So for example, instead of saying the agreement governing the activities of states on the moon and other celestial bodies, I will say moon agreement. And feel free if you want to capture it Going one, going two, going three. Okay. As you can see, this presentation is dedicated to our working group on behalf of the legal division. Through Moon Village Association report to the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space or UN COPUOS, we delivered recommendation for defining harmful contamination and today's topic in providing 5 principles of international environmental law that apply and adapt to human activities on the moon. They are precaution, prevention, long-term sustainability, intergenerational solidarity, as well as publicity and transparency. Here, I am going to talk about long-term sustainability as well as publicity and transparency principles, as Flavia has already shared the rest of the principles outstandingly. I'm sorry, it's freezing from here. Just want to make sure, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
All right. Amazing. So before we explore these 2 principles, it is a big question mark here. Why principle of international environment? I mean, why do principles of international environmental law relate to the moon? Why should we refer to this field of law? I second a statement from a book on principles of international environmental law by Philippe Sands et al. That outer space is among the most complex in international environmental law because of different countries' capabilities. Well, it is also most detailed as it covers our activities, rights, and duties of countries in extraterrestrial environments and both impact on its environment on an Earth environment. As you can see, the Outer Space Treaty recognizes the moon's environment. Recognized in this case is in legalese, which means that state parties admit the existence with responsibilities covered in the treaty. Then, state parties in the Moon Agreement take into account the definition and development of the provisions about the moon. So, applying and adapting the principles of international environmental law on the moon setting is part of this effort, developing these provisions of the Moon Agreement. All right, so in this case, long-term sustainability refers to a complement principles of the common heritage of mankind with a clearer scope of human activities on the moon. That is what we mean. And now there is a LTS guidelines for outer space, which is not a principle, but a complementing of outer space laws and principles. We recommend long-term sustainability to be included as a principle to mankind's activities as the moon, as this is something that we already implement in the Earth's environmental protection. And I can say most stakeholders already consider this kind of principle, even with different names. So long-term sustainability is focused on the development as well as the elaboration of actions. We think we can adapt the same thing to the moon environment, of course, ensuring our developments in exploration and use there, including its natural resources, will bring beneficial impact and preserve its condition for the current and future generation. This kind of perspective is already included in the LDS guidelines, again, not a principle, that describes continuous development rather than action for the space environment, both in economic and scientific terms, including in its technical. So what you see on screen is just an example from LTS Guidelines D1 that mentions safety measure development to protect the environment from harmful contamination. All right, so moving on to publicity and transparency. This is a principle that we can meet commonly in the environmental context, even in my country and international scopes for sharing and exchanging information. For example, this consideration is from the Aarhus Convention and includes public participation in decision making, followed by accurate, comprehensive, and up-to-date information. Then let's compare this context to outer space law. This is from consideration of the Outer Space Treaty. There is a term called mutual understanding, but still needs elaboration on the elements of its provisions. I mean, when we publish our research or discovery and make it public to everyone, accessible in all languages, of course, we can be more aware of the current condition and capability, including the decision made by the governments. We can propose and examine any law and policy products since the impact is also for us. If you guys think, oh, that must be that simple because it's just a consideration, well, not. If you want to understand the orientation of an instrument, consideration for both hard and soft laws is the key because it will be the source of its complement laws or principles, including guidelines for states. So we need a publicity and transparency principle to elaborate on mutual understanding, as having access to information is vital for the public or even to fellow stakeholders before deciding activities that have an impact on ourselves or other state parties, including aerospace activities, especially on the moon's environment. All right, so for short, long-term it's kind of hard for me to pronounce. Long-term sustainability as well as publicity and transparency will be great choices for regulators or decision makers to complement existing space law instruments governing mankind's activities on the moon. All right, so that's all from my side. Nuclear contamination and consultative mechanisms will be delivered by Ulpia directly and Salim indirectly. So thank you very much. Back to Edvaldo.
Thank you so much, Farah, for this amazing presentation. So, and then people, you can ask questions. Okay, we're gonna have some minutes. If you have any questions to Farah and Flavia, please just write here on the chat and we're gonna discuss a little bit more about it. Let's see. Well, so the comments are amazing. They really liked you and the presentation, of course. So we don't have any kind of questions. I think we can go through the second panel, right? So, and now, guys, we're gonna talk about nuclear contamination of the lunar environment and the need to address consultative mechanism of lunar activities, okay? So here in this second panel, we're gonna have Opia, okay, and Salim. I'm gonna share your presentation, okay, Opia?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if it's me the first, yes, you can share it, please.
Okay,
I can start.
all
Hello,
right.
everyone. Nice to see everyone here. And happy
All
Moon
right, could
Day.
you please? You are the host.
Okay, so I will share it, right? Is it visible to everyone?
It's still black screen.
Opia, I'm sorry, but yes, now I can see it.
Okay, great.
It's very clear.
Okay, so perhaps I can start, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so hello, good afternoon in Romania. It's actually Saturday's afternoon. Happy Moon Day to everyone. Happy to be here. Honored to be a speaker of this panel. I have several hats, as you probably know. One of them relates to being the GEGSLA Implementation Support Officer. So I am very close to the work of GEGSLA. Hence my the logo here. I also am the chair of the scientific and technical subcommittee of the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, and I'm also working for the Romanian Space Agency as a space policy officer. And I thought that it might be interesting for the discussion today to have a little bit of talk about what we have been doing at the UN, UN COPWAS, and about this consultative mechanism of lunar activities called ATLAC. and to present it a little bit and to basically showcase a little bit of why we need such a consultative mechanism. And hopefully you will all get along with me. And if you have any questions at any point, please let me know. It can be also interactive. So I found this picture in the news. It's taken from the space news a couple of months of years really ago. This Danuri moon orbiter on the 16th of December 2022 it has been launched, and by the end of December, so in half of a month, Danuri has been generated 40 red alarms. Basically, these red alarms were indicating potential conjunctions or close approaches with other spacecraft. And whereas not all of these alarms have been real because of the orbital elements that regulated themselves in the end, some of them actually required routine maneuvers to maintain safe orbits. So I picked this case to highlight just a snapshot of the reason behind why we need to consult on lunar activities. Basically, in this case, there have been, as I mentioned, several maneuvers needed. One of them was to avoid the close approach to NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Another one to avoid India's Chandrayaan-2. A third one to avoid Japan's smart lander for investigating moon, SLIM. And this is just to to highlight basically the fact that although we don't know much about it, and this sort of information are not really brought to us in a transparent manner, we actually need it. So what we did in Romanian delegation, we decided to propose a conference room paper, the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee in 2024. We proposed the approval of a consultative mechanism on lunar activities. It was back then, that's with the white, it's actually the link, you can click it and you can read it. That was an idea, of course, which wasn't generated by Romania. Romania doesn't have any sort of lunar activities, but it was a resultant of many discussions that all of us we had. And of course, it was a call from other colleagues, professionals, agencies, other member states, which were basically saying that we need to do something about it. So we were the fastest. That doesn't mean that we were alone. We were just the fastest in presenting this sort of idea. And so by the legal subcommittee, we had one other state which was co-sponsoring it, that was Switzerland. And also at the legal subcommittee, we also scheduled some informal consultations at the UN in Vienna to basically talk with other countries and see how this can, really be shaped within the current situation. And by the plenary of COPUOS that happened in June 2024, 1 month ago, we had another conference room paper entitled Draft Mandate, Terms of Reference and Method of Work that has been brought forward to the committee, to the member states and to the permanent observers to the UN COPUOS. And that has been open for discussions, debates, also intersessionally, in order to be agreed upon by the end of the committee. And so we also had a couple of informal consultations, more than we wanted. We scheduled for 2. We had actually 4 or 5. I don't remember very, very well right now. But anyway, all these efforts eventually ended up with agreeing for all member states and permanent observers of the committee to establish this action team on lunar activities consultation. And the second bullet that you have on this on the screen is actually the quotation from the UN COPUOS report, which will be hopefully agreed by the UN General Assembly in autumn. And until then, we will also have some more intersessional discussions and debates on how exactly this the structure of this action team is supposed to look like, and who's going to be in charge, and what exactly are we going to do really. And so you can actually download and check this document there with links. The presentation will be available, and of course, if you have any sort of indication, suggestion, critique that is constructive, we really look forward to having your opinions. And with that in mind, I thank you very much. This was my short intervention for today.
Thank you so much, Opia, for your amazing presentation. And now we are gonna share, okay, a recorded video by Salen. Salen had a little problem, okay, so because of this, he was very happy to share his amazing video about his presentation.
Please change the host to me, Lupia. Fulvia, please change the host to me. You are the host.
And where exactly should I change that? Okay.
You
Okay, 1
can
second.
go to
1 second.
the...
Yeah, got it. Make
Okay.
host. Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I am trying to talk about a theme, a topic that might look a little bit strange and different, especially now when since 50 years or more, no human has landed or walked on the moon. And we are moving from, look at this, you see, this is the lunar environment, barren, no atmosphere, nothing, and just the earth, little earth in the sky. And we are talking about in the near future is perhaps 2030s or something, where you have a small settlement on the lunar surface, place where a group of astronauts, people living there. And this is where the lunar environment becomes very important. And when we talk about nuclear contamination of the environment, the environment itself and the is open to all kinds of risks and dangers as any other, as on Earth as well. But the nuclear contamination comes because of there are nuclear reactions, usage of nuclear energy in different ways. And when we talk about the lunar environment, we specifically talk about how the surface and also in the future again under the surface and of course only just in the atmosphere, just that there is no atmosphere but actually space over the surface. We have some kind of effects that would affect the living environment, the people living in the environment. So the status of the surface of the moon is important. The lunar underground, a depth of about perhaps 5 kilometers, the space that extends for about 100 kilometers above the lunar surface is part of the lunar environment. Any extended dynamic offshoot of activities beyond the 100 kilometers also may develop. And the lunar nuclear environmental contamination refers to the potential impact of nuclear activities on the moon's environment itself. Uh, there are different ways of employing nuclear energy in space, and there are various concerns about employing this nuclear energy. One of them is we need this because of lunar exploration, and going around the moon, and even digging under the surface of the moon. We need to produce energy because we cannot just take uh, um, fuel or whatever it is, or energy to sustain the habitable place on the moon. And so we have producing production of the energy is a major concern, where the nuclear reactions and nuclear reactors as well will be instrumental in doing that. Lunar bases and settlements, of course, as it may develop, would have around 100 people living in a place on the lunar surface. Can you imagine how much energy is needed? And therefore, we can definitely are exposed to lunar nuclear contamination. I'm not, of course, mentioning the scientific research because this is always there. And if we look at why we have to worry about this, it's and there's take a look at the progress of the nuclear energy development in the scientific history of this year. Technology development. It started with big reactors, big sizes. Now it's becoming smaller. Uh, this brings us to our mind big planes. Now we have small planes and big computers at the time of Mark IV. And now we have just iPads. Actually, a telephone is a computer. They were very expensive, the nuclear uh, laboratories and reactors, but also now becoming are cheaper. And this is scary because at some time, we will feel that the threat of nuclear reactors are becoming smaller. In the same, perhaps, token, drones are small planes and from bigger planes, so can be used for the good or bad of human beings. The impact dependence, it was a single use to produce was a limited industry. Now we are just, it becomes an integral part of Industry 4.0. And of course, we cannot let aside the talk about the politics and world affairs, powers that nuclear powers are threatening each other at some time, and therefore we are talking about space military buildup. And the look at this is that in 2018, it would be perhaps it's too early, or some of us would think of it as a joke, actually. But the gold rush is being thought of 2028, mining, find precious resources on the moon, and nuclear technology is becoming faster and cheaper. That's a decade ago it started. Now the threat is around the corner, threat of nuclear. The solar radiation is a major source with 2 to 3 times more radiation. At the future moon explorers will be bombarded with such radiation that's coming from the sun, as we know. But it's more dangerous to the moon because of the Earth is protected by the atmosphere. And this was the first measurements actually were done on the moon by China's lander on that issue. Imagine living on the moon and you have radiations coming from everywhere. And the nuclear reaction, it's man-made danger. This is a man-made danger. And therefore, compared to the control and the policies of using and introducing nuclear technology on the moon will affect a lot the future of the moon environment. The Russians are working with large reactors as well, preparing them for a settlement on the moon. China and Russia have demonstrated their interest on the moon in the recent using robotic unmanned vehicles landing there. And there's Russia attempt further robotic moons, and China is targeting to send humans to the moon by 2030. And looking at the reactors, actually, astronauts living on the moon will need a lots of power. And this is where nuclear reactors becomes strong use. And saying so, the producing nuclear reactors, the threat of contamination is much realistic. It actually is more realistic than we think, actually. And many countries are working on that. There are, with the Artemis Accords, there are more than 36 nations have signed an agreement to work together in order to support the living on the moon. China is also spearheading a base on the moon, and this is a very ambitious program. It's exactly like what Artemis, the United States, is doing. China is also building up with a group of countries to developing a similar lunar approach. How much radiation? Oh, the lunar orbital, as it's called, a laser altimeter. Actually, it measures this radiation and monitors this. And these taking the data from different sources, from in different places remotely in the moon's surface. So the scientists can find out which area of the lunar surface is safer than the others, because people have to live, want to live on the moon. And the absence of magnetic and atmospheric space around the surface makes the dangers more realistic, actually. China joins the National Cooperative for a Nuclear Fusion Reactor. It's a huge one, and it's nicknamed as Artificial Sun, actually, and Huang-U-3. It's run by 17 collaborating labs. And imagine if this artificial sun is placed on the surface of the moon. The contamination is beyond imagination if it happens. It will contaminate, but can it be controlled? Korea is also very active in this regard, and it iterated the concept, which is called the superconducting tokamak, or is the experimental one, and that's developed by China. Actually, China's Hi-Fi Institute of Physical Sciences since 2000s, they were working together on this. Korea's artificial sun shattered a fusion record. Actually, they proved that the nuclear fusion is very realistic in a way that it might override the mechanism of control at some time, so the danger is enhanced. Talking about the chemical composition of the moon, there are so many studies about that, and we have the proof that many and a lot of chemical elements and materials that exist on the moon that can easily accelerate or enhance the contamination, which becomes more liable to nuclear contamination as well. So it's not only, it's like chemical contamination is joining forces with nuclear contamination to have the lunar environment suffer in a way. There's something called the 3-helium or third generation fusion, and the fusion is basically using the helium atoms to combine, to fuse them together, and the difference in mass, you can, some people call it hydrogen bomb, whatever it is, but it's just a variation of the idea that looks at controlling the production of energy and from nuclear matter, nuclear elements. And the helium would usually, it has two protons and two neutrons, but 3He actually has 3 neutrons and 2 protons. It's still helium, but it's more mass and therefore more energy when it is fused together. And there's a lot, the interest about helium-3, because it's discovered that a huge resource of helium-3 is on the moon's surface, especially at the South Pole. This is why the race to the moon is focusing on the South Pole. The United States and Russia and India and all sending robotics and the man-made, manned craft like Artemis 3 will be landing there. It's a huge mining. It's a gold rush, actually. And the companies, private companies, are thinking about that too. Where do we start, actually? Look at this is a map that is for a crater on the moon. And this crater, the Hermite crater, is the most interesting feature because it has a lot of undefined resources, undefined in a sense, not completely known and determined, but they are, perhaps it provides the coldest place ever in the solar system with a temperature of minus 249 degrees Celsius, which enables the contamination process of nuclear and hydrogen production or reactions become more dangerous even. Well, we just to remind you, there's the nuclear waste and nuclear proliferation. It's nuclear energy is growing a lot. So eventually, imagine small nuclear reactors like we have the CubeSats, which is about could be, I don't know, about 10, 15 no, even less cubic feet, or it could be something like, imagine it's like 40 centimeters by 40. It's like a box. This is a satellite. Imagine a nuclear reactors in the near future. How dangerous it is will be. So the spread of nuclear technology as well. And there's, of course, the concerns of national security on the moon or in the space and orbits as it is already on Earth. And accidents could happen. And safety versus economic opportunity, this is a crucial consideration. The European Space Agency is studying that in closely. Other arguments also has been made, like the mining at helium-3 on the moon has to be controlled by certain policies. My colleagues who are doing research and talking about this realize how much it's important. Fears over factoids, which is actually the process is like a moonshine, like in the West, mm, people were running to mine gold, and we will have the same thing actually in the whole process. These are the possibilities on South Pole for the landing of Artemis manned mission, Artemis 3. But notice all of them are near the South Pole. This is where the mines and it's expected to find a lot of precious minerals and material. And this is how it would look in the future, actually, where you have some kind of a habitat, a base where machines and people live and manage the actual mining. Um, there are different vehicles and tools and technologies that can remotely sense such mining and such presence and such opportunities. One of them is the famous LOLA, the Lunar Orbiter Laser Alternative. And this is how it goes. You would see that it's either solar and radiations and people working on the surface of the moon and present solutions to different and interesting areas. Very quickly, this is the and this is the South Pole, and this is also the backside. We'll have a lot of in the future possibilities, a huge resource of information. Again, this is the total is field of length is this is see the kilometer the distances and how much because of the colors here, it tells you how much of the presence of the minerals in the under the surface of the moon. And it's expected to be actually beyond 2050 that will become a real reality with the space travel and lunar mining industry, etc. As you see, we are just about in 2030, 2050. This is the establishing of these possibilities. And well, what do we do here? We need to look at the space military politics. Military is building up in space, and this is very dangerous. Imagine of a third world war, but it's not third world war. It could be the first war and something like that. The situation analysis have to be studied closely by scientists and not only by military commanders and politicians. And the objectives is really to define focus on short-term objectives to control the lunar environment and protect it from nuclear contamination in order to come up with a longer-term objective. And of course, the vision for a stable development of moon moon presence, human presence on the moon, requires a complete study and strategic initiatives. Finally, I would like to go ahead with alarming case of natural contamination. And in October 1989, there was a huge solar blast, and that affected a lot, not only on Earth, but on the moon. Imagine if this happens, and it will happen, especially when the astronauts are on the moon. If one of these storms occur, we need to protect our astronauts and bring them home safely. And now we're not talking about 2 or 3, there could be 20 or 30 people living, or even more. And this is the artificial sun, which is a huge fusion reactor, and that is going to be very influential in any development. And this is not science fiction. This is the Star Trek Enterprise. This is a near future reality for lunar exploration with contamination of different nuclear and chemical things. I would advise, there's a famous, very famous and well-known science and author, Sir Arthur Clarke, who is famous for 2001 Space Odyssey, many books. He has a fantastic story for science fiction. It's called A Fall of Moon Dust. And when you read this one, you will see the vision. He was a visionary. So this is exactly what we expect life would be in the lunar environment, mixed with a nuclear and natural and under the surface of the moon and above, etc. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing the presentation of Salim. And then we have some questions. Okay. Let me see it here. So we have different kinds of questions, but some of them, they look like the same, okay? So Farah and Flavia, please, there are some questions for you. How can the principles of international environmental law be adapted to regulate human activities on the moon, especially in the context of natural resource use and environment? Farah and Flavia?
I'm sorry, where can I see the question?
Yeah. It is on the moon, especially in the context of natural resources, use, and environment.
Thank you very much for the question. So the easiest way to answer that, we can adapt and apply those principles on international environmental law to the outer space treaty field by making something like guidelines, principles, or the treaties itself. But this is something that we have to propose is to be a principle. So I would say that we need to make a like principle framework to recognize those principles. Something that we need to know if we make a principle, not a treaty, is non-binding. But if you want to make it binding, so we can create a treaty on behalf of the state parties, something like that. But if you refer to the national scopes, of course, we can make it through our internal regulation, through regulators and so on. But in international scope, of course, there must be a discussion before we establish an agreement or a principle. Thank you very much. I think Flavia can elaborate the question, the answer.
I think just as they are when we have the meaning. For example, on Earth. The principles serve as a guide, avoid harmful contamination, and generate safety. Preliminary environmental impact studies, for example, is an option. Okay, all mining activities on Earth, for example, use. So I think we can start to think something about it.
Great.
Like it.
Great. And there are two more other questions, okay, here, that one person asks you, girls, like, are there abundant materials on the moon that could potentially be extracted by humans for benefit? And in the same line, we're gonna have another one about waste. And the person asks, like, how do waste conditioning methods ensure that nuclear waste remains immobilized and safe for long-term storage? Laura?
Can you please paste the question? I don't.
Yes. Are there abundant materials on the moon that could potentially be extracted by humans for benefit? And on the other hand, the other person asks about waste, the conditional, okay? The possibilities about this that we could immobilize and we're gonna have for long-term storage.
Just please, I think helium trace, we have, for example, helium, how can I say in English? Helium trace.
Yes.
Helium 3. So this isotope is here on Earth, but is believed to exist in abundance on the moon, making it a valuable resource for the production of clean and efficient and energy.
Okay, great. And another questions. I think, yes, I think everyone, okay, could answer this question. Lupia, Flavia, the person asks like, what are the international frameworks to address environmental protection in the moon?
Sorry, come again, Edvaldo.
Yes. What are the international frameworks to address environmental protection in the moon?
So I think most of the professions in international space law also address about the environment because that's the top of those instruments, not only about the environment, but also its natural resources. We have to make our activity and other celestial bodies based on um, peaceful purposes. So when we want to if we want to talk about international environmental framework, of course, it's everywhere. Actually, you can find, as I told you, everyone. Like for example, in the Outer Space Treaty, we can find about something like environment of the moon and other celestial bodies. So it's already part of the international
About this. Do you know if it's possible to land without generating ejecta? Camera is frozen, right? Hello, Pia. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can right now. We are experiencing heat waves in Romania, and my internet is not so very stable. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. So, was it my turn to ask the question, or?
Yes, sure. Do
Yeah.
you
Okay.
know?
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna read it. Okay. Do you know if it's possible to land without generating ejecta?
Well, if is that, I mean, I don't know, is it addressed to me? I have never landed on the moon. I don't know the answer, sorry.
Okay. So Farah and Flavia, I think this question is much more for Salim, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So I'd like to say sorry for this person because Salim could not be here with us, okay, today. But people, the questions, I'm gonna send it to Salim. Salim is gonna answer, okay, in a document, and we're gonna send it to you via email. We could do this, okay? So the next questions is very clear and very easy. I think this person is very near, okay? And the person asks like, what does GEGSLA mean? So one of you could answer, Upia.
Sure. Global expert group. I mean, I have it here.
Yes.
Global expert group on lunar activities. We have 3 working groups. One deals with multi-stakeholder mechanism, international diplomacy, and so on. That is working group 3. The working group 2 deals with industrial aspects into lunar activities. And then last but not least, working group 1, whose members are here today. It deals with international law and how international law is applicable to the moon and to lunar activities. And whoever is interested in GEGSLA, please send an email to gegsla@moonvillageassociation.org and ask for more questions, ask for more clarifications, and I will be happy to provide them.
Okay, Upia, thank you so much. And next questions, we're gonna have a question by Christoph Boskelon. Christoph is gonna ask about the problem, okay? How to solve the nuclear waste problem in orbit and on the moon.
I've got a partial answer to that. That's in my presentation. If you know all actors which are interested in both keeping a sustainable environment and having sustainable activities on the moon and around Earth will join forces, somehow we will get to have agreements. We will get to have rules of responsible behavior in the outer space, in and around the moon. And so that might be one way of solving not only the nuclear waste problem, but the waste problem in general. And I think that's also valid on Earth.
Okay, thank you, Upia. So we don't have any questions anymore. Written questions, okay, here in the chat. And now we have 2 people that raised their hands. So Upia and Rami Daravani. But let's start with Upia. Please, Upia.
Thank you. I actually have a curiosity, which was sparkled by the presentation of our colleagues, Salim. He was talking at some point about this Artemis Accords and International Lunar Research Station. So I was wondering, and I'm asking now the colleagues from the international law, if you ever had some sort of assessment on any incompatibility or I don't know some opposing ideas between these 2 frameworks, which are actually, you know, I mean, one country can join both. Would that be okay on the international level? Thank you.
Flavia, Flavia, do you want to start or me? Or I will start?
I think
I will start.
Flavia's connections, we have troubles here with Flavia's connection, Farah.
All right. So for short, there is nothing prohibition to join 2 instruments that is posing of each others. I mean the provisions, but it will become problem to their internal regulation, because when we commit to be when we admit a international agreement, it means, I mean, as a state party, it means we have consent to be bound with that agreement, and we will enforce these kind of provisions to our national regulations. So the problem is not in international, actually, from my perspective, but in national side. So because in international side, we will have something like a third party mediator to solve our problems. But in national law, if there is two regulations that is opposing of each other, so we need something like constitutional court in my country to solve that problem. So it will lead to another issue.
Okay, thank you, Farah. And now we're gonna have, I think, questions about this topic that Rami Daravani Talahu. I'm so sorry. I cannot read in your language, okay, but I'm just giving my best here. But please, could you open your microphone and tell us your questions? I'm sorry, Rami.
Okay, thank you so much for your give my opportunity. Hello everyone, my name is Rami Darwanita Ogu. I'm from Indonesia. Before, I'm so sorry because I have one trouble with my camera, so I can turn the camera on. Firstly, thank you so much for the excellent presentations. I have one question for Ms. Farah, who professionally explained about the Moon Agreement and mentioned about the Outer Space Treaty. So my question is, what is the role of international institutions in enforcing the provisions about the outer space treaty? Perhaps that's my questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rahmi. So actually, when we talk about international institutions, we can refer it to international organizations. I mean, current international organizations that talk about um, outer space. So as far as I know, there's a lot of organizations that can deal with outer space. In the United Nations itself, we have USA, or Outer Space, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, and UN COPWAS in legal and scientific fields. But also, if you refer to the Moon Agreement, something that we need to know that in the Moon Agreement is also referred to international regime, but it's only for exploitation of Moon's natural resources, and unfortunately, we don't have it now. I mean, when we talk about international regimes, in theory, there would be agreements, institutions, but in this case, we don't have the institutions. So I hope it answers the question.
Okay, Farah, thank you so much. And Upia, Christoph is saying thank you for you, okay, for your comprehensive answer on nuclear waste and waste in general in orbit and on the moon and on Earth. Okay, so he thank you so much. So, and now that's the end of our webinar. I hope you guys enjoy it, okay, with these amazing presentations given by Farah, Flavia, Upia, and Salim. And please, guys, I just posted a link for you to give us your feedback about the event, okay, that we prepared for you with so much happiness, okay? So thank you so much for your audience. Bye-bye. Have a nice day and good night, good afternoon, and good morning. Okay, so take care, guys. Please, Upia, Flavia, Farah, if you want to say thank you, so it's up to you.
Yes,
Thank you,
everyone.
Perhaps we can take a picture
Thank
at the end.
you.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Okay, bye-bye. Oh, I think someone
Bye-bye.
is turning on his camera. So guys, please turn on your camera. I will take a really quick screenshot.
Yes, okay.
Bye, everyone. Flavia, I'll leave. Christopher. All right. I will count. All right, great, great. Flavia? Christophe? Okay. Let's say there's no. All right, your camera is not working. All right, so I will count. I know worries. 1, 2, 3. Another pose. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, everyone. See you in another opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.
No problem.